Based on the comments I've seen on some of the videos and reels I've posted, this KTM 390 Enduro R might be one of the most misunderstood dual sport bikes ever. So let's talk about 6 things that people are getting wrong about the brand new KTM 390 Enduro R. I want to say thank you to Moto Camp Nerd for sponsoring this video. The first thing people are getting wrong about this bike is going to sound dumb because the name is the KTM 390 Enduro R, but this is not an enduro bike. So I've taken it out on the trails. I've done some enduro style riding, very mild stuff, but it's not what we think of as a current modern enduro bike. So the term enduro used to mean a dirt bike that was street legal because it had turn signals and mirrors. But the term enduro has kind of evolved these days. You might hear the term hard enduro quite a bit, and the bikes that they use for those hard enduro events are more like the 2-strokes, the 200s, the 300s, and less like the street legal dual sports of old. The epitome of a modern enduro in my mind is like the KTM 350 EXC-F or the KTM 500 EXC-F, and those are basically dirt bikes with the bare minimum stuff put on them to make them usable and viable on the street to pass legal requirements. This bike is not an enduro bike by either of those definitions. It is a dual sport through and through. It is a true dual sport. It is good at both riding on the road and riding off the road, but it's not spectacular at either one of those things. People get the wrong idea, and I blame KTM for this, and I understand that they needed to differentiate it from the adventure bike, but I don't know. I would have called it the KTM 390 DS or something if it were up to me. But in my opinion, based on what the modern definition and current sort of cultural idea of what an enduro bike is, this is not an enduro bike. It might fit the old definition of a street legal dirt bike, but even then, this is a very streety dirt bike. So first thing people are getting wrong, and this one is completely understandable, is that this bike is not an enduro bike, despite the name, at least in the way that we think of a modern enduro bike. The second thing that people are getting wrong a lot about this 390, it's this idea that this 390 is somehow an upgrade from a KTM 350 EXC-F or even the 500 EXC-F. And it's understandable because there's a lot of nuance here in what kind of bikes are what, and people have this idea that the number next to a bike, so 390, 350, 500, equates to capability, right? So a 390 must then logically be better than a 350, but it is not in any way. This is a very different bike than that KTM 350. That 350 is what I would call an enduro bike. It's essentially a dirt bike with turn signals and mirrors and stuff. The 390 motor is a street bike motor. Yes, it's a dirt bike-ish frame, but this is a very heavy bike. It's not in the same class as the 350 or the 500. It's not an upgrade. It's not something you would want to switch to get more capability. Really, the number next to the bike is not a good indicator of capability. If you need a number that helps you figure out which bikes are quote unquote better or higher quality, go with the price tag, because this bike is $5,500 MSRP in the US. And a KTM 500 EXC-F is like $12,000 or $13,000. And the 350 is less than that. I don't remember. I want to say it's $10,000 or $11,000, but it's at least twice as much as this bike. So this is not an upgrade from a 350, and you shouldn't be shopping them against each other. And honestly, and this is going to sound mean, but it's not, if you don't know the difference, if you don't know why you shouldn't buy a 350 EXC-F versus this, don't even look at those bikes because you're not there yet. You don't have the skill, you haven't ridden enough, you don't understand the market enough. This is a very beginner-friendly bike for the most part. A 350 absolutely is not. The number 3 thing I keep seeing people get wrong, and I just literally was arguing with the guy on the internet about this morning, is that exhaust is too low. You can't have that on a dual sport or an adventure bike because the adventure is in the same place. So there's no can up here. The exhaust comes out right down below the swing arm. And supposedly that helped them save a bunch of weight. What I find most adorable, and I don't mean to sound condescending here, but what I find most adorable about that particular misconception is this community is ridiculously overconfident sometimes. Or we feel awesome when we do things, when we go out and ride, but in reality, the thing that we did is not as awesome as it felt. And a perfect example is water crossings. Y'all are worried about going through 2-foot water crossings with this exhaust? I've been through a lot of water crossings and very few of them have been that deep If you go back and look at footage of your water crossings or most people's water crossings, we're talking 6 inches to a foot in most cases. Occasionally, you'll go through something a little deeper, but honestly, if it's up to your knees, you shouldn't be riding through it anyway. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. One, if the engine's running, then the exhaust comes out, not in. There's no way water's gonna get in there to your engine, which is what people are afraid of. Two, the engine is uphill from the exhaust, so even if you stop to shut it off, water would have to flow uphill to get into your engine and damage it in any way. It is a danger, I guess, if you went into a water crossing and dumped the bike, but that's a danger anyway because your intake is up here, and even bikes with a high exhaust are gonna get water in that situation, and the difference there is that it flows downhill and has a little momentum as it goes towards the bike. Look, I'm not a mechanic, so I could be wrong here, but I have been to a boat ramp, and there sure seem to be a lot of people running their engines with their exhaust underwater, and not even moving forward, just sitting there, and even in some cases backing in, and nobody's engines are hydrolocking or getting destroyed by water inside. So yes, it's a different design. Yes, there's potentially some issues there, but it's not a deal breaker. It's not gonna kill your engine to ride through water with an exhaust this low. That would take a lot for it to actually damage it. Much more concerned with dinging it and breaking it down there where I'm gonna hit rocks and drop it on stuff than I am with anything else. And even then, it's still more protected than a high mount exhaust on the side here when the bike goes over. Look at the Tenere 700, for example. That bracket likes to break off when people drop their bikes on it. Before we jump into the most common misconception and the most common complaint and comment I see about this bike, I wanna take a second to say thank you to Moto Camp Nerd for sponsoring this video and the channel. The best place to buy your motorcycle camping gear, your motorcycle riding gear, and your motorcycle luggage is Moto Camp Nerd, your one-stop shop for all things motorcycle adventure. That's right, Moto Camp Nerd has added riding gear and motorcycle luggage to the world's most carefully curated selection of motorcycle camping gear. Ben, the owner, is one of the most meticulous people I know, and he applies that laser focus to gear selection. Every single piece of camping gear, luggage, and riding gear has to meet his very exacting standards, and he's very nitpicky, believe me. Moto Camp Nerd is run by Ben and his wife, Mary. Ben works the store in the mornings before going to his full-time job in the afternoons. When you buy gear from his site, you're supporting his dream of facilitating the adventures of others like you and I full-time. Got gear questions? Email and he'll answer them. Not sure what you even need to go on a motorcycle camping adventure? Ben has a free, full moto camping gear checklist that will point you in the right direction. I've been working with Moto Camp Nerd since the site launched. I'm proud to work with them and fully support their mission of making other people's motorcycle camping and adventure dreams come true. Make sure you pop over to the site and check out all that Moto Camp Nerd has to offer. There's a link in the description, or you can just type in motocampnerd.com. So thanks again to Moto Camp Nerd for being awesome and sponsoring my adventures, and also being named Ben, because really that's how you can tell if somebody's awesome, if their name is Ben or not. But let's talk about the number 4 thing I think people are getting wrong about this KTM 390 adventure, and let me paraphrase from some of the comments that I've seen a lot. It's unbelievably overweight and underpowered. Yeah, it is, because it's not an enduro bike. It's a street bike engine in a dirt bike frame. It's going to be heavy. It's not purposefully designed to be a dual sport. It's an ADV bike with a smaller tank and less plastic. This is a naked version of the 390 Adventure R. And by that standard, by the standard of an adventure bike, 355 pounds is very light. If you think of it as a dual sport or even an enduro bike, like the 500 EXC-F, which is 240 pounds, yeah, it's massively overweight, but it's not designed to do the same things as those bikes. This bike is a true dual sport. It's designed to do both sports well. That is street and dirt. It's heavy on the trail, but that's an advantage on the highway. You're getting blown around much less than you are on a lighter bike like a 300L Rally, a KLX 300, or even the aforementioned 500 and 350 EXC-F. To be fair, it is about 30 pounds heavier than I think it should be. I really do think this bike would make more sense at 320 pounds, 325 pounds, then it would be a true competitor for that DRZ and the 300L Rally. This bike is not underpowered for what it's supposed to do. If you think it's underpowered, it's because you're comparing it to bikes that aren't in the same class and that it was never meant to compete with. It has a lower compression ratio, which gives it less horsepower, but it also means less maintenance and much better long-term longevity, and it'll do better at higher RPMs for long periods of time, which is what a street bike does. There is a fundamental misconception in the off-road riding community. A lot of people assume that the goal is to ride as hard and fast as possible at all times, and any bike that doesn't do that is terrible. That is not what this bike is for. If you need more horsepower and less weight, then it's not made for you. Go spend twice as much and be half as comfortable. You don't have to get it, but don't give it crap because you don't care to understand that not everyone has the same priorities as you. Some people just want to get out there comfortably, have a good time, and get home comfortably. And this bike is much better at that than bikes that are quote unquote more capable, faster, lighter, and have more power. The sixth thing I think people are getting wrong about this bike is who is it for? So all of these kind of interweave a little bit, as you'll see, but this is a dual sport for experienced riders, intermediate riders, people who want a little bit more power than they get with the entry-level bikes like a 230, a 300. Those bikes are great, and they're just capable enough to take you out on the highway. They have just enough power to do a lot of things that you want to do without being scary or intimidating. But there's not a lot of bikes that exist in the middle range. The DRZ has always kind of been a great bike for like a second dual sport, like something I wouldn't want you to start on, but it's great once you get a little experience and confidence. I feel like the WR250R used to be that when it existed, and this KTM 390 Enduro R is that as well. So when you feel like you're wringing the neck of your KLX 300, getting everything you can out of the suspension and the power band that's there, this is a great bike to move up to. It's a dual sport for riders who want to be more comfortable riding on the highway but don't want to spend 10 grand on an ADV bike, hence the extra weight here and the street bike engine. To me, it's more of a direct replacement for the old DR650, and if you think of it that way, it's really not that overweight and it's a hell of a value. Think about it this way. On Black Friday, stores will have a ton of deals, right? But they also always have some kind of crazy doorbuster deal, like a $100 TV. And the point of that is to get you to come in for the TV, and then you're in the store and you may start buying other things, right? Well, this is KTM's attempt to get people on their bikes earlier, to get them into the KTM pipeline so that as they grow as riders, they then start to look at the 790, the 890, even the freaking 1390, or maybe they ride this to its capability and realize they want something lighter and they don't care as much about road performance and they move to a KTM 350 or a 500 EXC-F. This is an entry-level bike. The price is a true doorbuster price. You're not gonna find a bike like this for $5,500. It just doesn't exist. And so the value is fantastic, and there are a few sort of things, caveats. It's a little heavy, a little underpowered compared to other things. I don't actually think it's underpowered. I think it has a perfect amount of power for most of what I want to do. Just a great setup overall, and it's just a ton of value for $5,500.
I got way off track in my notes and didn't bother to set the last point up, but the sixth thing that people are getting wrong about this bike is that it's pretty dang unique.
So this 390 Enduro is just a 390 adventure without its fancy clothes on. It's not really a dual sport. In my opinion, it's a very skinny adventure bike. If it had a gallon bigger tank, it would be pretty perfect. Hopefully the aftermarket delivers on something like that very quickly. This bike with a 4-gallon tank would only weigh 370-ish pounds, but could go anywhere my 790 could go and be a hell of a lot easier to ride in the rough stuff. I've always said the Unicorn ADV bike, you know, that one that is comfy on the highway but very capable on the dirt, doesn't exist. This bike with a bigger tank could potentially be that. So I'm excited to keep riding and testing it and figure that out, but it's important to understand where this bike falls in the overall spectrum. And if you look at the price, I think it's pretty obvious, but some people just see $390 and they think it slots in a place different than where it does. So I want to use this as a light adventure bike that I'm not afraid to take into the rough stuff, and we'll see how it does over the course of the next 1,000 miles before I review it. I want to say thank you one more time to Moto Camp Nerd for sponsoring this video. Make sure that you pop over to the site for all your motorcycle camping, riding gear, and luggage needs. And don't forget to use the affiliate link in the description and a pinned comment when you do, so that he knows that I referred you, I get a small commission, you support the channel, and it costs you nothing extra. Everybody wins. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you, and please do not forget to be excellent to each other.
Excellent!